My name is Emily Carter. I'm 27 and I teach 7th grade in a Columbus suburb. After working nights and weekends, I finally finished my bachelor's in social work. Graduation day felt like a promise I had kept to myself. My parents, Diane and Mark Carter, live about 30 minutes away. They told me 2 months before the ceremony they wouldn't come. "We're busy that weekend," my father said. My mother texted excuses that read polite but cold. They'd always favored my younger sister, Lily, who is 24 and married to a man with a steady paycheck. Lily smiled and kept the house tidy. She never asked for help. My parents told themselves she was more responsible. That idea cost me years of trust and a lot of money after Lily convinced them to add her name on our mother's bank account and on the family home's paperwork. I tried to explain what happened. They refused to listen. They said I was dramatic, that I should be grateful for what I had. That stung more than losing money. My diploma that morning felt like a small victory against nearly a decade of being dismissed. I walked into the university hall holding my card and thinking about how they'd chosen Lily and left me out. I set my phone on the seat and watched the live stream because that's what parents do, right? Except they didn't. They were absent in the chairs and absent in the chat. I felt something quiet and heavy settle inside me. I had promised myself I would not beg for attention, but I also couldn't let the people who stole my voice believe they had the last word. Important characters. Lily, 24, charming on the surface and sly in private. She was the kind of person who smiled when someone tripped and then stole their pen. My parents, Diane, 53, and Mark, 55, were kind people when Lily was around but quick to blame me. Lily had convinced them to let her help manage our mother's financial affairs after Mom had a small spell of illness 2 years ago. At first, I accepted it, thinking family does what family must. Then, strange things happened. Bills were paid late. My mother said her account showed transfers she didn't recognize. My calls were brushed off. I started paying attention. Texts with vague receipts, sudden changes in passwords, a new deed that listed Lily's name. I tried to ask my parents to sit down and talk. They waved me off and said Lily had everything under control. They told me I was making mountains from molehills. Work kept me steady. I saved money and worked at the law office across town 2 nights a week doing intake forms to make extra cash. That office gave me my first real hint that something was wrong. A paralegal there, Jen, noticed my questions about powers of attorney and explained how easy it was to forge a signature when someone had access. She said, "If you think someone's taking advantage, gather paper proof." I started keeping copies of bank notices, saved emails, and wrote down conversations. I also kept a small recorder and a list of dates. I didn't know then that list would become my only weapon. The betrayal jumped from suspicion to fact on a cold December afternoon. I visited my mother's house to drop off a casserole, and Lily answered the door. She wore my mother's favorite scarf. My mother shuffled in the kitchen and didn't recognize me for a second. Lily said she'd taken care of shopping and the bills. I asked to see a bank statement. Lily laughed and said, that's not your business." My mother murmured something about trusting Lily. I left with my head hurting and the feeling I had walked into a fog I couldn't see through. That night, I went back to the law office with printouts and the recorder. Jen sat me down and said, "This is more than odd. These transfers line up with dates you recorded. Get a certified copy of the deed and a private investigator if you can." I couldn't afford a PI, but the firm offered to review the documents pro bono for now. The more I learned, the worse it looked. Lily had quietly convinced Mom to sign a power of attorney and then used that to move money into an account in her name. She'd had my mother's signature added to a quitclaim deed that removed my name and put Lily's name on the house. When I told my parents, Mark's face went pale. Diane squeezed his hand and said, "We trusted her." Their trust felt practiced, not real. They didn't ask how or why it had happened. They were ashamed and furious at me for making trouble public. Lily started acting like a victim. She called me dramatic in front of Mom, and Mom believed her. The people who should have protected me chose the person who hurt me. Things kept getting worse. Lily began restricting my visits, telling my mother I was stressed and needed space. My mother listened. My father stopped answering calls when I asked for copies of bank statements. At work, my students saw me hold back tears, and I felt small in ways I hadn't in years. I started to think about my options. The law firm could help, but litigation costs money and time. Jen found a path. If we could prove forgery or undue influence, we could ask a judge to freeze accounts and reverse transfers. That would require solid paperwork and sworn statements. I spent the next months building a timeline. I matched transfers to receipts Lily had shown Mom. I pulled together emails, texts, and the recorder files where Lily pressured Mom into signing, just to keep things simple. I typed everything out, organized it, and put it in a binder. Oddly, Lily kept making mistakes. She sent a photo of Mom's signature comparing two forms and added a casual brag to a friend in a message I later saw accidentally. That message was the golden piece we needed. She admitted changing dates and helping Mom sign away the headaches. My parents still refused to really believe me. They called me a troublemaker to neighbors, which hurt more than any financial loss. I worried about losing my place of birth, the house where Mom's pictures hung, and the quiet that kept me grounded. With the binder in my bag, I started to plan not just a case, but a moment where my parents could no longer look away. I wanted the truth to land where they couldn't ignore it, somewhere they respected and couldn't control. I knew I couldn't win by yelling in private. I needed a public, undeniable moment my parents cared about: my graduation and their reputation. My plan had 3 parts. First, get legal help to secure an emergency freeze if the evidence was strong. Second, make sure the lawyer, who believed me, would be present at graduation. Third, arrange timing so my parents would hear about action before they could hide behind denial. I met with Sarah, the attorney at the firm who took my case. Sarah was 40, blunt, and good at reading people. She agreed to file an ex parte motion, an emergency request, if our evidence showed forgery and undue influence. That would ask a judge to temporarily freeze transfers and require an investigatory hearing. If the judge granted it, the bank would flag accounts and Lily couldn't move anything. The hard part was timing. The filing required affidavits and a signature from my mother, who still trusted Lily. Sarah said we could file based on documentary evidence and my recordings if we swore to their accuracy. We did that. We also planned a backup. Sarah would attend graduation as my guest, quietly ready to call the court if an order came through. I worried about being petty, but this was about justice and protection. Sarah warned courts move fast sometimes and slow other times. She said, if we get the order before or during your ceremony, they'll know something's happening. I nodded and felt my chest tighten. The weeks before graduation felt like walking a tightrope. I kept working, grading papers, and filling intake forms at the law office. I rehearsed receiving my diploma and rehearsed keeping my face calm if my parents didn't come. I also rehearsed what I'd say to an attorney if the judge issued an order at any moment. I worried Lily would catch wind of the filing. She was quick with messages and had access to Mom's phone sometimes. Sarah put a confidentiality hold on filings and used secure lines. She told me, we won't leak this. If Lily finds out, she'll bury evidence. My mother was fragile, but helpful in small ways. She signed a sworn statement at the firm, though she didn't fully understand the legal language. When she left the office, she hugged me and said, I trust you. That hug felt like a repair I hadn't expected. On the morning of graduation, Sarah called and said a judge would review the filing that afternoon. I set my phone to silent but watched my email like a hawk. The ceremony moved slow. I sat with my classmates, thinking about how long it takes for truth to land. At the exact moment the dean announced my name, my phone buzzed. Sarah's text read, order granted. Freeze in place. My heart pounded so loud, I thought the students near me could hear it. I walked across the stage with the binder under my arm and a weight I couldn't explain. When my name was called, I could see Sarah in the 5th row through the camera feed on my phone. She stood, and for a second our eyes met. My parents were watching the live stream at home. The feed showed Sarah, and my mother, who had already been uneasy, said, Who's that with Emily? Mark frowned and told Diane to stop making a scene. Diane paused, looked at the screen, and then yelled, "We should go." They got into the car and drove in a panic. I didn't know that until later. For me, the ceremony blurred into a slow, rehearsed rhythm. After I shook the dean's hand, I waved at cameras and walked off stage toward Sarah. She met me with a small, steady smile and handed me a sealed envelope. I nodded and kept moving. In the lobby, Sarah made 2 quick calls, one to the bank and one to the courthouse, and then turned to the family clusters looking proud. A woman near us asked, "Who is she?" Sarah leaned toward a security desk and said quietly, "Order granted. Freeze in place." A few minutes later, my parents burst through the doors, breathless and apologetic. Their faces were pale, and their eyes darted to Sarah. Diane's hand trembled when she reached for me. Instead of hugs, Sarah stepped forward and spoke plainly where others could hear. "Miss Carter, we've obtained a temporary restraining order on transfers, and a hearing is set. The accounts are frozen." Silence fell. I could see denial crash across Lily's face as she listened. For the first time, my parents looked at Lily the way she had made them look at me for years, confused, betrayed, and exposed. The weeks after graduation were messy and real. The court set a hearing, and for the first time my parents sat in a room where facts mattered more than charm. The bank's freeze bought time to audit transfers. Lily lost access to the accounts. The judge ordered an investigation into the deed and the power of attorney. My parents cried in the waiting room while I sat on a chair and watched. They apologized in that small, shaky way adults do when they realize they were wrong. I accepted some apologies and refused others. I had to set boundaries. Trust couldn't be turned on like a faucet. Lily tried to fight in court and in the neighborhood, spinning stories of stress and misunderstanding. The court didn't like the casual, I was helping defense when there were dated messages and altered forms. Ultimately, the judge voided the quitclaim deed and ordered Lily to repay the transfers. She also required supervised visits to Mom for a time and a guardian ad litem to check on Mom's well-being. I didn't get everything. The repairs to my parents' trust took longer than any account balance. But I got justice in a way that didn't involve yelling in the street. My diploma hangs on my wall now, and the house has my mother's photos where they belong. My parents still have work to do, but they know I won't be ignored. I learned that revenge didn't mean cruelty. My revenge looked like careful law, patience, and bringing real evidence into a place where those I loved couldn't ignore it. If you ever feel small and unseen, gather your facts, get help, and choose a moment where truth speaks loudest.